There's been a lot of discussion about things getting back to normal in the last year. Just when we thought things were getting back to normal, the goalpost was moved over and over again. 2 weeks turned into 2 months, then 2 school years. When is normal going to show up again? Here's what I want you to hear today. When we lean on any sense of normalcy, predictability, security, or control, then we miss out on leaning on Jesus. Returning to normal keeps us from experiencing the kind of life God intends, the kind of life God defines in Scripture. In Romans chapter 12, "Therefore, I urge you, brothers and sisters, in view of God's mercy, to offer your bodies as a living sacrifice, holy and pleasing to God. This is your true and proper worship. Do not conform to the pattern of this world, but be transformed by the renewing of your mind. Then you will be able to test and approve what God's will is, His good, pleasing, and perfect will."
Life is fragile. It's a fact we're learning in real time, every day. What we once called normal has seemingly disappeared. There's uncertainty in the air, restlessness in our hearts. Things we once took for granted are becoming difficult to find. Our usual day-to-day has evolved into this odd chaos. Peace is becoming obsolete. Many have lost jobs, security, and those they love. The pain is undeniable. But what if our fragility caused us to lean harder into God? What if, in our weakness, we chose to rely more on His strength? Would our outlook change? Would the peace that passes understanding begin to drown out the noise of this moment? Would we walk in a quiet confidence, knowing our God is mighty to save? We're not promised tomorrow, but we are given a simple truth to stand on. Our God goes before us. He will never leave us. He will never forsake us. Yes, life is fragile. But in our weakness, He is strong.
I don't think it's an understatement to say that for the past 2 years, our world has been flipped upside down. I'm not telling you anything you don't already know. Our homes became workplaces, our kitchen tables classrooms. Zoom, we discovered, was not a show on PBS in the 70s, but a Star Trek-like communication device. Supply chain delays are normal. High gas prices no longer make us sigh, and we don't even look twice when the bill total is much higher than we expected. Maybe in frustration, your heart has cried out, "When will we get back to normal? When will we get back to the way things were? When will we stop hating each other? When will fear end? When?" Like the video we watched stated, what we once called normal has disappeared. There's uncertainty in the air, restlessness in our hearts. Our usual day-to-day has evolved into this odd chaos, right? As I mentioned, I'm not telling you anything you don't know. You also experienced it personally. But let's not miss this important detail. While managing life in the midst of a global pandemic, we had time to rethink. It was like someone had pushed the pause button on the world. I'm going to date myself here. When I was a kid, there were no remotes. If you wanted to turn on the power or change one of the 4 TV stations, you got up, went across the room, and you turned the dial. Remotes made life easier. And then the second generation of the remote control came out with this button on it, the one with 2 lines. And for the first time, you could push that and pause the action on a show or a videotape. You could take a moment to get whatever you needed, and then when you pushed the pause button again, you hadn't missed anything. And that's what happened during COVID. It was a pause on life. Do you remember what you were doing, where you were when the pandemic began? Probably not. This was slow and gradual until we were told we needed to stay home. Maybe you remember that day. Then all of a sudden we realized everything had changed. No one could have expected the global response that almost seemed to stop the world in its rotation. See what I mean? The remote button in life had been pushed. Everything was paused. We had time to think, time to evaluate our lives, time to think about the inevitability and the fragile nature of our lives when we kept an eye on the internet count of lives lost to COVID. There are a couple of questions in the video worth repeating. But what if our fragility caused us to lean harder into God? What if in our weakness we chose to rely more on His strength? Would our outlook change? Maybe God wanted us to slow down, to spend time away from the normal busy pace of life. Maybe God wanted us to be still. I personally learned much. Psalm 46, "Be still and know that I am God. I will be exalted among the nations. I will be exalted in the earth." There was another time in history when the world stopped. Darkness, midday, a loud earthquake. And after a horrific crucifixion of Jesus, the earth seemingly stood still and silent. All hope seemed lost, and fear had won, it seemed. The days felt like years, and the nights were even longer. Yet in the midst of hopelessness, Christ arose just like he said he would. Our champion had once again kept his word and claimed all power in his hands. Things were finally getting back to normal, right? Just when it seemed like the disciples were getting their footing and things were getting back to normal, then Jesus ascended into the heavens. And with the people gazing into the air, Christ shares the promise that when the Spirit would come, they would receive power. Power? The disciples didn't want power. They wanted their Savior. The people would have rather just allowed Christ to be their healer. The people would have rather allowed Christ to strengthen things out. The people would rather have been hungry and allowed Christ to turn 2 fish and 5 loaves into a feast. The people would have rather taken their matters to Jesus and listened as he explained it and solved the issue. But the Holy Spirit transformed their lives. Jesus was no longer physically there, but he had given them his power to love, power to heal, to transform. I want to let you know that you are not alone. Jesus is still with you. You have to resolve in your mind that with every new change in your life, Jesus is at work all around you, especially when it doesn't seem normal. Laura and Martin had a fairly normal first year of marriage. They learned how to budget and review financial statements and how to respond to each other with grace and kindness every time one of them left dirty socks or dirty towels on the floor. They had a wonderful plan for what their new life together would look like. But as they entered year 2 of marriage, Martin's strange health issues led to multiple doctor appointments and then ultimately to a rather serious diagnosis, a brain tumor. When days in the hospital turned to months, they realized the short-term detour might actually be the new road they were on. They were left asking, when will things get back to normal? And once they began to experience the damage that the tumor had done and the lifelong disability Martin was most likely facing, they were at a loss. And as time went on, Laura found that they didn't have to place their hope in God returning their lives to normal. They could simply place their hope in God. And when we place our hope in God rather than the return of normal, we can maintain a hope that this world cannot take from us. It takes actively setting our minds on the things of God rather than the things of this world. And that's what our verse said today. Do not conform to the pattern of this world, but be transformed by the renewing of your mind. Then you'll be able to test and approve what God's will is, his good, pleasing, and perfect will. Mary and Martha have quite a reputation in the Bible. Call it sibling rivalry, call it an interruption in their lives. But when Jesus showed up in their home, everything was turned upside down. One sister wanted to make sure everything was just right and their guest was treated well, and the other wanted to stop doing the normal and spend time listening to Jesus' every word. Jesus disrupted normal. When Jesus showed up, things changed. Normal was different. As Jesus and his disciples were on their way, he came to a village where a woman named Martha opened her home to him. She had a sister called Mary who sat at the Lord's feet listening to what he said. But Martha was distracted by all the preparations that had to be made. She came to him and asked, "Lord, don't you care that my sister has left me to do the work by myself? Tell her to help me." "Martha, Martha," the Lord answered, "you're worried and upset about many things, but few things are needed, or indeed only one. Mary has chosen what is better, and it will not be taken away from her." You know, this might be a little old, this whole topic of getting back to normal, but here's what I know and what I want to share. I grew closer to the Lord during the lockdown, and I am gone back. My schedule is different. My expectations of what I can accomplish are different. The time that God has my attention, it's increased. Did you experience any of the same? Don't miss out on those moments of closeness with the Lord that we discovered these past couple of years. Lean on him. Find rest in him. Find strength in him. God told his people, "Be strong and courageous. Do not be afraid or terrified, for the Lord your God goes with you. He will never leave you nor forsake you." Yes, life is fragile, but in our weakness, he is strong. Our God goes before us. He'll never leave us. He'll never forsake us. And that realization will renew you. Truth is, normal was not that great anyway. Jesus assured his followers with these words, "I have told you these things so that in me you may have peace. In this world you will have trouble, but take heart. I have overcome the world."
You give life, you are love, you bring light to the darkness, you give hope, you restore every heart that is broken. And great are you, Lord. It's your breath in our lungs, so we pour out our praise. We pour out our praise. It's your breath in hearts will cry, these bones will sing. Great are you, Lord. And all the earth will shout your praise. Our hearts will cry, these bones will sing. Great are you, Lord. And all the earth will shout your praise. Our hearts will cry, these bones will sing. Great are you, Lord. And all the earth will shout your praise. Our hearts will cry, these bones will sing. Great are you, Lord. Is your